Hello, friends. I'm host Eric. I'm here with Arch Admin Susie, Carolyn, Nas, Jesse, Audra, and the blankest of the blankies, Blankertons. And today I want to talk about my general claim that some people might think is absurd, uncalled for, or unjustified, which is that Jung, MBTI, and Socionics got it wrong. That I, host Eric, have figured out the one true understanding of cognitive functions, namely that the first and most important dichotomy is that between the metaphysical and the physical, and which direction the cognitive function goes. And what I mean by this is that each cognitive function is really a way of paying attention, and it's a way of paying attention that converts either data into meaning or meaning into data. And so the way it works is if you have the judging functions are judging functions, as Jung and MBTI and Socionics all agree. But the perceiving functions are split into two kinds of functions, namely epistemological functions, which are NI and SI, and action functions, which are NE and SE. So the basic point of this is that when you take metaphysical action, what that means is you're converting physical data into new meaning. That's extroverted intuition. When you take physical action, it means you're converting meaning, things you know, decisions you've made, into physical action, into data. So that's the other direction. So those two things are the same kind of function, except they go in the opposite direction. One goes from the physical to the metaphysical, namely NE, and one goes from the from the metaphysical to the physical, namely SE. Now, for the epistemologies, SI and NI each give us different kinds of information. SI gives us knowledge based on what's happened, what we've learned, stuff like that. We have memories. So, for example, I remember that I briefly talked with Kimberly on Facebook Phone earlier today. I know it to be true. It's not something that's up for debate. I did that. It simply happened. There's no avoiding the reality of it. Similarly, NI tells us certainty about truths that are not related to things that have happened necessarily, not related to the physical, but rather to what's true and right and good and just and beautiful and not beautiful and a bad decision in terms of artistic things and a good decision and stuff like that. So it, in other words, converts the the metaphysical knowledge of truth and goodness and fitness into physical data by having people act upon what they know to be true with NI. SI, in contrast, takes things that have happened, actual things you've learned, things you've encountered in the world, and converts it into knowledge, which is a kind of meaning that is unchanging and not open to dispute. Okay, so lastly, we got your judging functions. They too are in the same fashion moved from metaphysical to physical or physical to metaphysical. So if you're talking about TI and FE, they both convert physical data into metaphysical judgment, meaning. And what that means is if you're using TI to evaluate something, you go, no, I render this invalid or not justified or not legitimate in some sense because it fails to meet my criterion of consistency. And it's an objective judgment function, which is to say we can point out and explain why it fails to meet that criterion. Same with FE. It converts data from the world, people's emotional reactions, and converts it into meaning about how they feel about me or how they perceive me or how they perceive each other. And then that conclusion is open for scrutiny. I can say, here's why I believe this person feels that way about that person. You can dispute it. So those are objective ways of converting physical data into metaphysical meaning. FI and TE are the opposite. TE says it goes with FI. FI says, well, here's what I value and what I feel regardless of reason or rationality or logic or anything like that. And then TE puts that into action in the physical world. It is the opposite of FE and TI. So I don't want to explain any more of that at the moment except say I think that's the fundamental dichotomy upon which the cognitive function model ought to be based. And when you do base it on that, it plays out a little differently than they say in MBTI and Socionics. I now want to stop talking and open the floor to any questions, thoughts, disagreements, or observations, or whatever. Everyone is in full agreement. Silence equals assent.
Sorry, I'm applying for jobs. I heard
I
some of
spaced
you.
out.
Okay, well, if you at home didn't space out, you can respond in the comments. This seems like a good length of video, and thank you for watching Talking with Famous People. Of course, as always, don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.